So it's interesting because people who love period dramas have enjoyed this because it feels like it's a different take on one. And people who hate period dramas have enjoyed this because it doesn't feel like the period dramas that they've hated in the past. So it sort of works for both people, which is nice, you know.
My father bought you, along with a piece of land not fit enough for a cow to graze upon. You will remain indoors with your prayer book.
I like the fresh air. I like being outside.
Take it off. Your nightdress, take it off. Face the wall. Face the wall!
Where is my husband gone?
Away.
To do what?
Nothing for you to concern yourself with. You'll be on your own for a while.
Een jonge 19e-eeuwse vrouw die wel heel ver gaat om haar vrijheid te bevechten. Dat is het prikkelende gegeven van de film Lady Macbeth.
Are you lost?
This is your first film.
Yes.
And they tend to be personal. How's this one?
I chose it because of the central character of Catherine. In her I saw somebody who was really compelling, not particularly likable, and this was for some people problematic. They're like, why don't you find a more likable central character? But for me, you know, the things that made her unlikable were the things that were most compelling and dynamic. And so I was drawn to her in the source material, the Leskov novella, and then working with Alice Birch, the screenwriter, she really brought her to life in a fantastically brilliant way.
Going back to the character of Catherine, because she said she was compelling, but compelling how?
What she does in the course of the story in the book, some people have said feels quite modern. It's only modern because she acts out of character for the period. So today we would say, well, yes, okay, her choices are quite extreme and not everybody would make them, but we understand why she does those things in a way that maybe we would expect her to behave differently in the middle of the 19th century. And you know, I have worked on literature of that period in theatre, and they do. You know, women very often don't fight back. They either sort of are silenced, or they run away, or they kill themselves. And so to find a character like Catherine, who does neither of those things, but does something which is quite sort of extreme and proactive, was very exciting.
She won't speak. She's mute.
What if it comes back?
It won't. Do you love me?
Of course.
Do you adore me?
Of course.
Could you do without me? Could you do without me? It's husbands and wives that kiss like that.
Did your husband kiss you, Catherine?
We needed somebody who could go through that full physical journey and emotional journey from somebody who was innocent and optimistic as this young bride going into this sort of strange marriage, but was at least hopeful that she might have a family or be able to play the role of the wife, and then on her wedding night be given this sentence, basically, and told that she was going to be a house prisoner. And then we see how she very slowly starts to change and develop, and then she's almost a completely different person by the end of the film. And to find somebody who could actually do that, you know, over the course of 24 days, which is what we had to shoot the film, you know, we were just overwhelmed when we met Florence and saw what range and what possibility she had. Her attitude or her approach towards Catherine was exactly right in terms of who she is as a 19-year-old in 2017. All we had to do really was then try and get her to sort of be restrained within this sort of corseted mid-19th century Victorian world so that she would sort of behave herself. But underneath, she wanted to scream out, basically, and that was the best sort of tension that we could find.
You know I shan't be parted from your life, Sebastian. Through hell and high water, I will follow you. To the cross, to the prison, to the grave, to the sky. I'd rather stop you breathing than have you doubt how I feel.
Catherine, she's crazy about Sebastian, she's crazy about sex, but is she also just crazy? Crazy period?
I don't think so. Not personally. I think that she goes she is under extraordinary stress and pressure because of her situation. And actually, when you say she's crazy about sex, I mean no more so than a young
The average 90-year-old.
Exactly. Exactly.
Today. There's a difference.
And this was a big question for us because all the way through the process of developing this project, Alice and I were talking, and Fowler as well, how different were women in 1850 in terms of, okay, obviously what society wanted them to be was different, but underneath that, is a 19-year-old in 1865, does she have a different sort of sexual appetite than a young woman in 2017? Probably not. I mean, I think that it's just because of the way in which we view history tells us that certain people were basically sort of shut down and very sort of restrained.
You might say that people today are much more exposed to sex.
With the Victorians, I mean, some of the literature you can read shows that they had a very active attitude towards sex. I think it just wasn't sort of talked about so much.
You're home.
You've acted so very shamelessly and so very stupidly. You will never see that man again.
We did it so that we could be together here.
You did it for us.
We did it.
Given Mr. Lester's recent demise...
My husband is not deceased.
He is assumed so,
He is missing.
but presumed dead.
The film is about gender, of course, but it's also in a way about race, because she has this black help, and I think that Sebastian, probably of mixed blood,
Yeah.
that's no coincidence, right?
Well, it's worth saying that we worked very closely with Shaheen Baig, the casting director, and we said from the outset that we would colourblind cast. So essentially, we would see everybody for every role, regardless of their background. And they were totally open rehearsals, and we then chose the best people for each role.
But the funny thing is that it adds layers to the film,
Yeah.
and you must
But it's
have been
not.
aware of
But
that.
they weren't written in.
They were just written in as, I think her name was Anna.
Anna, yes, exactly. Sebastian, Catherine, and so on. Teddy
That's
and
all.
Agnes. Yeah, yeah. And they weren't even in the book either.
But you know what you were getting
Well, what I
yourself
would say
in
is
for.
that, I mean, what we found as we did our research for the film is that actually so many of the photographs that we were finding from this period showed that England was far more diverse than we had first imagined. And actually I think that so many British period dramas have whitewashed British history and have decided not to show that side of British history, and it's just not accurate. So what we have found in Lady Macbeth is far more accurate to the period than what you might see in other dramas of this period.